Hello and welcome to the Forge's second episode of Ignite, our series of short webinars designed to inspire, connect and connect us while we work from home. Last week we heard from Forge co-founder Simon Garnett, who explored the value to be gained from the new crop of tech-driven insight tools that we are seeing in the insight community. That talk's now available on the Forge LinkedIn feed as well as our YouTube channel. You can find details of both those channels in the chat feed. This week, we're going to be hearing from another founder at the Forge, Ben Glassock. He'll be talking to us about how we unlock the naturals opportunity we're seeing across multiple categories. As with the previous talk, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat feed and we'll pick them up at the end. If you want to direct them to me directly, feel free. You'll find me in the chat as Adam Rolls. I think we have most people here, but I'm going to hand over to Ben now. Ben, do you want to just give it 1 minute while we wait for a couple more people to arrive and then kick off?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, Ben, I'd say go with that. I think we're going to be recording this anyway, so if anyone does arrive late, we can direct them to the video to see it later.
Great stuff. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well, safe, and staying sane as much as can be at the moment. As Adam said in his introduction, this is a session where we'd like to share a little bit of our, knowledge and perspective that we at the Forge have gained from working on the naturals opportunity across a range of different categories. And those include categories as diverse as the world of food and the world of snacking, the world of alcoholic drinks, the world of soft drinks, the world of personal care, and a number of categories in that world, and also even the world of kind of clothing and apparel. So a whole different range of categories that we've had experience of investigating and exploring this opportunity in the context of. I think as a headline, just the one thing we'd say almost before we start is that we think this is a really, really fascinating subject, and one that opens up a world of ever more nuanced opportunity for brands and businesses. It was something that, as I'll go on to talk about, once upon a time felt very simple, very one-dimensional, and is increasingly becoming much more complex and much more nuanced. It's also something that I guess once upon a time felt like it was just for a small subsegment of consumers, was only relevant to a minority, but increasingly is feeling kind of so big in the consumer psyche that really we feel that there are no brands out there, no businesses out there that can afford to not have a point of view on this opportunity. And as I say, we think it's so exciting because it feels so complex, so multi-dimensional, but ultimately something that's moving, something that's evolving constantly. I guess where we'd start is that is this place that once upon a time, there really was a time when natural meant just one type of proposition. It was really all about propositions that were pure, that were simple, that were gentle, that were all about being unprocessed and unadulterated. So effectively in that world, naturals was something that was just black and white. You were either a natural or you were not natural. And increasingly, what we're seeing is that there are really shades of grey, or, to stretch the analogy, shades of green these days. What we're seeing is that there are non-natural brands, brands that never started off being natural, that are now kind of producing variants that are natural, and that are starting to, I guess, spread their wings into that territory. What we're also seeing is I guess a new version of natural, and new versions, if you like, of natural appearing in the market. So versions of natural that are about man, if you like, harnessing the power of nature, often concentrating the power of nature to deliver something that is kind of new, different, and often even more powerful, rather than just being this pure and gentle sort of benefit territory. So as I say, what we see really is this, what was once one thing has now become a spectrum, if you like, between what we call the simple versions of natural and the more evolved versions of natural. just to kind of give you some examples on a page here, in the world of snacks, we're talking about something like a kind bar, for example, which is all about just the purest essence of fruit and nuts, maybe combined with a little bit of chocolate, but really is talking about pure, unadulterated, untouched ingredients from nature's garden, through to a product like Huel. So a kind of a snack bar, or indeed a kind of meal replacement drink, that is all about being scientifically designed to provide the perfect nutrition for you. Still, however, based fundamentally on natural ingredients. So it's made from things like pea protein, for example. So ultimately still natural ingredients, but combined into a recipe through the power of science, through the power of kind of human intervention. Equally, when we look at the world of food, we're talking about things like, I guess, the world of Riverford, for example. So a brand that is all about delivering, sorry, I've just jumped forwards, all about delivering, I guess, the purest vegetables and the purest meats, all about organic, all about straight from the field, straight from the farm, untouched, as I say, unadulterated, through to these new brands we're seeing. So brands like Beyond Meat, so we see the Beyond Burger, things like Impossible Burger, where again, we're talking about going to the laboratory, still fundamentally starting with the raw materials of nature, but man, changing those, impacting those, designing something that's different from what nature delivers, designing something that can be, in many ways, even better. And similarly, we can look at the world of personal care, for example. We've got brands here like Veleda, brands here like Neil's Yard, that are brands that absolutely are rooted in this sense of the purity and gentleness of nature. You go to their websites, all you see is fields of the raw ingredients, fields of plants, fields of botanicals, all about the kind of gentleness of the process that's used to kind of extract those things. And on the other side of the spectrum, on this more evolved side of the spectrum, brands like Mother Dirt, so a brand that is all about, I guess, exploiting the world of kind of probiotics and prebiotics to actually support good bacteria on the body and on the skin, and to deliver benefits, to deliver, I guess, health, to deliver personal care, to deliver cleanliness and hygiene, but in a completely different way. And again, a way that still is ultimately rooted in nature, rooted in the world of bacteria and good bacteria, but one that's been, I guess, evolved, that's been supercharged, that's been concentrated through the power of science. And the other example I've got there is La Prairie, I guess a brand that not many of us have ever kind of found ourselves in a position to afford, given that it's about £300 a pot. But still a brand that if you go to their website, you'll find they very much talk about, starting with the raw materials of nature, but enhancing them and concentrating them through the power of science. So the first dimension that we want to talk about is this sense of the simple through to the evolved, and the fact that it's a spectrum there. There are points along this spectrum. So we're still not just talking about two kind of territories here. We're talking about a spectrum of choice and opportunity. The other dimension that we think is really interesting here, and I alluded to it at the start, is the way in which consumers themselves have also evolved in the way that they look at natural and look at natural benefits. At the top, we have this idea of natural as a philosophy, and that really feels like the world of natural that always existed. So again, just as the world of simple natural always existed, the world of consumers who felt a philosophy and a philosophical, I guess, alignment with the idea of natural, those guys have always existed. So the idea that, yes, it's about me, the person, but it's also about me, the person, in the context of the wider world. But at the other end of the spectrum, increasingly, we're seeing a set of consumers who are interested in natural because of the benefits it can deliver, and because of the idea that it can deliver, in some cases, superior benefits. So they're less aligned with the idea of philosophy. It's not about that they believe that natural is necessarily better, but there are areas of their kind of lives in which they believe that natural can deliver a better version of the benefits they seek. We just give you some examples of consumer kind of broad consumer typologies that we've seen in this area that kind of just help to pull apart this spectrum, hopefully give you a bit of a sense of what we're talking about. At the one end of the spectrum, the philosophical end of the spectrum, we see a group that we call natural seekers. So for them, natural is just a way of life. Authenticity is absolutely critical. What they're looking for is brands that have always been natural, brands that can tell them a story about, when they were first formed or first created, that they were always about natural. Brands that can tell you a story about their founders, who were absolutely motivated by the desire to bring a natural proposition to the world. Interestingly, these are consumers, when we look at this end of the spectrum, who are quite often open to accepting some compromise in performance. So they're so driven by this desire for natural that actually they'll sometimes accept things that don't perform as well because they deliver those natural benefits. I guess a very familiar example for those of us who have dabbled in it would be the world of kind of natural laundry solutions, where often people will tell you that they don't quite deliver the efficacy, the stain removing power, but ultimately there are people out there who will accept that because they think it's so important to be laundering their clothes, washing their clothes with something natural. If we drop that down a level, we get people who are, I guess, just natural preferers. They're not absolutely philosophically aligned with this idea. They're a little bit more ambivalent as to the benefits, and they see it as a nice to have, something they'd like to have where possible, but ultimately they're much less willing to accept this compromise. So for them, efficacy remains really important. And there's a balance to be had here. There's a kind of sense of preference, but it really depends very much on the category and very much on the kind of benefits they're seeking as to whether their natural preference will actually kind of manifest in choices. The next group down, we've called, there can be quite a specific group, we call them irritation sufferers. So they're people who are, rather than driven towards naturals, they're really about being driven away from the alternative. So much more driven by the functional avoidance of chemical things, of chemical ingredients that they feel can, as the name would suggest, irritate them, leave them kind of feeling uncomfortable. And often these are consumers who, rather than necessarily looking for the presence of positive natural things, are actually more often looking for the absence of chemicals. So looking for free from kind of, I guess, guarantees, free from propositions. So in the world of shampoo, they might be looking for things that are free from SLS, so sodium lauryl sulfate, or free from parabens, free from those kind of ingredients, rather than necessarily looking for the presence of a range of botanicals, for example. And finally, at the bottom of this spectrum, we have a group that we call kind of efficacy above all. So a really interesting group that can be really skeptical, that are only really motivated by natural if it's actually a better choice. So you have to convince them that actually this natural thing will outperform all of the other alternatives, will outperform all of the, I guess, potentially more chemical and more unnatural brands. So two dimensions there, one that's really about propositions, one that's really about people and consumers. And we think this is I guess, a really useful map for looking at the world. So, looking at propositions, but looking at consumers. The other overlay here is the category itself. It's kind of crucial to say that naturals just plays out differently for different categories. And in particular, what we're talking about here is how important efficacy, going back to that word, how important efficacy is in a particular category. And on the other hand, the flip side of that coin, how dangerous failure can be in the context of that category. So just to give you a couple of examples from the world of personal care, dabbling in the world of naturals when it comes to something like deodorant or something like toothpaste, often for a much more limited group of philosophically aligned consumers, because most consumers out there have real question marks about the efficacy of those products and have real issues about the danger of failure. So if your natural deodorant doesn't work, you're going to go to work. Well, in the old days, you'd be going to work and you'd be running the risk that you'd basically end up smelling halfway through the day, or that your clothes would end up with kind of wet marks on them. So the danger of failure being almost too big to risk. And the same with toothpaste. You go to work using a natural toothpaste, you might worry that you know, before the day's over, you're going to start to have issues with kind of freshness of breath, etc. And what we see, therefore, is, as I say, a smaller group of consumers tend to be kind of exploring those kind of natural propositions in those categories. And that can really sit in contrast to a category like facial moisturizers, for example, where the cost of failure of a facial moisturizer is just that your face is perhaps not quite as hydrated as you might like it to be. It's not a terrible cost. It's not going to be a significant issue for your ego, for your kind of, you know, personal kind of environment, and for your interactions with other people and your social interactions. So what we see is broadly a kind of greater pool of consumers who could be interested in propositions and natural propositions in that territory. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, apart from category, is also pointing out that there can be real differences in culture in this territory as well. So we see countries and cultures that are much more broadly aligned with natural philosophies, and those for whom it feels like more of a risk, more of a challenge. And just to give you one example, I'd point to Brazil, for example, a country where its biggest personal care brand, a brand called Natura, is absolutely rooted in the world of naturals. And that's in kind of stark contrast to what you might find in other markets, where the really big brands tend to be those that are still very much more scientific. Just going to kind of finish on a couple of questions for you that are really kind of questions to ask of your category and your brand, questions that I think are interesting when you yourself might be trying to unlock this opportunity. And the first of those is really about how well suited your category is to the world of naturals. And it comes back to the point I was just making. How dangerous is failure in your category? How important is efficacy in your category? Because that can make a massive difference to the likelihood of consumers to engage. The second question is really, where are consumers in your category? Are they inherently inclined towards natural solutions? Or is there belief, or actually is there doubt? And that can be, as I say, it can be about consumers in your category. It could equally be about the kind of countries you operate in, and how natural plays out in those countries and cultures. And the final question is kind of what kind of proposition in the world of natural is right for your business and your brand. When you think about the roots of your business, the roots of your brand, does it lend itself, you know, to the potential to deliver this more simple proposition, simple natural propositions, all about purity, all about gentleness? Or do you have a brand that is actually much more aligned with delivering that more evolved combination of kind of scientific knowledge, scientific improvement, and nature? So are we talking about 100% natural, or are we just talking about incrementally more natural? And I guess what we'd see is that actually there's much more growth in the latter, so in this idea of more natural, incrementally more natural, than there is necessarily in this world of pure natural. And just one final slide before I open up for any questions, is, you know, a last provocation. Everybody's you know, favorite face of 2020, Greta Thunberg, and really she's standing for this idea of sustainability, of course. And I think sustainability is a really interesting question. It's not the same as natural, but it's clearly part of the same conversation. When I say it's not the same, that's because you can be natural and not sustainable, or you could be natural and sustainable. Equally, you could be kind of non-natural and sustainable, and vice versa. So it's almost another dimension that crosses those dimensions we've been discussing today. And, you know, that makes perfect sense. If you just think about something like food, the examples I gave you there, gave you kind of river food organic. You know, if the whole world wants to turn organic, there's not enough land in the world for us all to eat organic kind of meat and vegetables. At the same time, you look at something like Beyond Meat. It's much more scientific in its approach, but actually in many ways might be a much more sustainable solution for the long term. So that's comes to the conclusion of this little talk. I hope you found it interesting. And as I say, open for any questions that you might have shared with Adam.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Ben. That was really interesting. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? I've unmuted if you want to.
Could you have a look at food and what we need for...
Hang on. Yes, there are a couple of questions here, Ben, that I did have come in. Question here about how you might go about sizing something like natural in your category. Do you have any thoughts on how you've done that before for any clients? Sorry, Ben, you're on mute there. You're off mute now.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, I just told I was on mute. I think that's a really fascinating question. It kind of comes back to, well, I think the answers are there is not one answer to this particular question. Certainly, it's about understanding your category in particular, and it's also about understanding how consumers in your category might define naturals or might understand naturals. If natural is not one thing, then actually trying to size and understand that landscape is about first establishing clarity about what versions of natural exist in your category, and then you have the ability to go out and size, how they sit at the moment in terms of how, current product landscape might kind of fit into those subcategories, but also the ability to go and kind of explore with consumers which of those they find more interesting. If I just give you, an example again, coming back to that kind of simple and kind of evolved kind of spectrum, in some categories we even see the world of, what's almost quasi-natural. So, as I said, non-natural brands that I alluded to in the beginning, kind of talking about natural and often, having the same fundamental formulation, but just adding in some natural ingredient or adding in some kind of story about natural. So something that's just about feeling a bit more natural. And that's very much different from this world of kind of almost true natural, almost this idea of being born natural. So these brands that have always been natural. And again, very different from this world of kind of more evolved natural, the idea of science and man coming together, the idea of kind of new natural, if you like, or enhanced natural. So there are categories where, for example, you'd want to really map out those different versions of natural before you went and began to kind of explore sizing them. And as we say, in terms of sizing, we'd always look through the consumer lens to do that. But I think it's also possible to look at the landscape today and almost categorize the products that live in your category and understand which are the successful ones and which are less successful.
Okay, brilliant. Any more questions from anybody? No? Okay, well, look, Ben, thank you very much for that. That was a very interesting talk. If anybody joined late, I know a couple of people came into the chat late. If you joined late, we have recorded this, so we will be putting it on our online channels. You can find our online channels in the chat box. So we've got the newsletter, we've got our LinkedIn, and we've got our YouTube. So keep an eye on there for future upcoming shows as well. We've got lots of exciting content coming in the next few weeks, and you can find out more about it in those places. So thanks again to Ben. Thanks again for everyone for joining us, and goodbye.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you.